Good. Right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to this evening's Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'm Paul Osborne, as you would know, and councillors are here and there's some join us online. Right, before I start the meeting proper, I'm just going to pay a bit of respect to a chap I've known for a long time. Some of you may know him, probably most of you won't. Richard Farhall, who is currently the Chief Executive, if you like, and responsible financial officer for Rye Town Council. He's retiring at the end of February, and I just thought it was worth a mention because this evening is his last full council in Rye, which he'll be taking. I think there's a couple of committees coming up, but I'm pretty sure this evening is his last full council. And he's been doing it all the time I've known, which is over 20, I think it's either 25 or 26 years he's been doing that. So I think he's due his retirement. So all I would just want to say from a personal point of view is well done and happy retirement. So there you go, and hopefully they'll find someone new to take over who's half as good and they'll be all right. So, back to this evening. First item on the agenda, minutes. Do I have your authorisation as chair to sign the minutes of the meeting of this committee held on the 17th of November 2025 as a correct record of those proceedings?
So move.
Thank you very much. Item 2, apologies and substitutions. We have apologies from Councillor McGurk and Councillor Chowdhury is substituting for him. We have members joining online. We have Barnes in the plural, John and Mary, who have car issues, so they're at home, and Councillor Maynard is also at home, and Councillor Colleen, Cabinet Member, is also joined us, and there's another one there. Councillor Rathbone Ariel is also on there, and that's the Robert broadcast. Additional, and there's none others, Louise? No, great, very good. Additional agenda items, there are none. Disclosures of interest and dispensations. Probably not, I wouldn't think, no. Councillor Maynard, I assume anything to do with East Sussex County Council?
Absolutely, Chairman. So particularly pertaining, I suspect, to agenda items 6 and 8 as an executive member of East Sussex County Council. Thank you.
Okay. That's that one. Item 5, Rother-owned leased accommodation policies, pages 3 to 66. What we have here. Review the implementation of Rother District Council owned leased accommodation policies in line with latest legislation and resolve that Cabinet be requested to agree the following. There are a number of them: tenancy policy, repairs policy, recharge policy, damp and mould policy, electrical installation condition reports, gas safety policy, fire safety policy, and delegate authority to granted to housing solutions and need managers to make minor amendments and update as may be required in the future. We have to do this because we now have a number of properties in the council's ownership, so it's only right that we do things properly. So, Joe, over to you, or over to Rob, who has written a report. He said others have helped, but I'm sure he's just done it all himself. Rob, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. So we've brought these new policies into place. Ultimately, this is about helping the people that are central to who we serve in the tenants. And we want to keep them at the centre of everything and keep them as safe as possible. And this is what I think these policies will do ultimately. It's about improving safety in line with certain laws and regulations that have come into place and are coming into place over the next couple of years. And also as well about improving our record keeping. again, improving systems, new data systems, which will allow us to keep an eye on trends and changes, and have a look at the data in the future and try and keep ahead of things. I want these put in place basically for a good use of time for staff as well, that they are being able to serve the tenants as well as they can do in terms of support as well. So allowing some of these changes within the policies would allow that also. I think in terms of where we are with some of these policies and what's put in place and keeping in line with compliance, I think we're doing an excellent job already at RODA in terms of where we are with people, in terms of things like ANWAB's law, which has come into place, and turnaround in times of getting hazards or damp and mould issues looked at within a certain time period. I think we find that actually we're already doing that and keeping ahead of that, which is really important. So some of these things are already being done. I think we've got a good trust with our tenants that we've got in our TA accommodation as well. The staff are out there speaking to them every day or every week. They're out there, so them knowing about things that are changing and being able to approach us and us being able to put these things in place makes it a lot easier. In terms of those other things as well, I think we're just going to be, as I said, freeing up time as well, in terms of this compliance issues that we could come across in the future. Staff are being trained in HHSRS, should all be up to date within the next couple of months. The staff that we've got currently should have that again for certain changes that are coming in the next couple of years, which will help us as well. Does anyone have any further questions around that?
I don't know. I've got Councillor Burton. What I will say is, before I forget, before anyone forgets, in the notes I've got thanks to Julia Ashton for preparing policies and report.
Absolutely, yeah.
So in case she's sitting in, she's now got a mention. So, Sue.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, this is really positive to see all these policies come together and telling us they're actually ahead of the game or doing it already, which is really great. The bit that I would have liked to have seen is some tenant feedback, like tenants leaving properties, just so that we make sure that we're not missing any points, or that to back up your telling us that they see each other regularly and all that. I think that would couple us to reassure us that these policies are the right way to go and we're doing things right, probably already. So another time it would be great to have a bit of tenant feedback accompany the report. Not a lot of work, please, Rob.
On that, absolutely, we are bringing in tenant satisfaction surveys yearly as well. We're also going to have tenant feedback groups, which we're hoping to hold locally, quarterly as well, for tenants that are welcome to come along and discuss issues, or just about what's going well, what's not going well. I want us to be in a position where we are constantly trying to improve on the excellent work that's already being done. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is by speaking to tenants and seeing what their needs are. We can sit around and discuss it in offices all day long, but ultimately that's what really matters, is speaking to them and having their input and allowing them to live their lives as much as they can, and then with the help they do need around things, is being able to provide that support and help as well.
Thank you, Rob.
I suppose ultimately it's sort of I won't say it's difficult, but it's not as easy because our tenants are only sort of temporary, aren't they? Well, the shorter time they're needed is probably better, but obviously people stay in there for longer. But most of our stuff is they're not in there for 10 years, are they? So, but still, feedback is useful, isn't it? Make sure you know we're getting it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that in terms of the tenants, yeah, generally you're looking at a couple of years that they should be there. But as I say, each person's different and each situation is different. But as I say, that regular feedback is going to be important to find out what's working for them and where, again, maybe where we're, again, by speaking to them about that, where there are maybe alternatives that can be offered as well.
I've got Councillor Barnes got a hand up. I'm not sure if it's John, probably John. John, are you there?
It is, John. First of all, let me echo the warm words about the way the department already operates. I think this is an attempt to put formal policies in place, which we need to do as a registered provider. And I thought they were very well done set. I had one small point and one real question. If you turn to the tenancy policy, paragraph 4, I think the word requirements has been left out after eligibility. It doesn't quite make sense as it reads, that very first sentence. The other one, which is a more serious point, is on urgent repairs. It seemed to me 10 days is rather a long time, and I wondered if we shouldn't say something. We obviously will try to outperform that. I wonder if we shouldn't reflect that in the policy and say as soon as possible, but in any case, not less than 10 days. Not more than 10 days, sorry. There's an implicit question there.
Yes, that sounds perfectly reasonable to me, Councillor. We will make a note. If you were able to put your feedback to us in writing, that would help, but we can make a note of what you've said this evening and update them as such. Yeah.
I'll try and put an email in place, Joe.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you.
Good. Councillor Clark, Charlie.
Thank you, Chair. Well, regarding the temporary accommodation, we're able to actually house people appropriate to their needs. So, you know, if it's a large family, they'll be in a large property. Smaller, might be in a flat, but it may well be they're in there for quite a time. But there will always be certain families who have accepted that temporary accommodation, but it may not be near their family or appropriate to schools they want to go to, so they may still be applying to move somewhere else or do a housing transfer or something. They're still able to do that, aren't they? They're able to be on the transfer to an area they feel more appropriate to their family needs.
Yes, they can obviously speak to us, and if there is, we've got a case at the moment where we're moving someone back from one area back into Bexhill to suit the needs of the family and childcare.
We happy? Oh,
Apologies to lateness, Chair.
that's right.
The reason is because I had a 4 o'clock appointment at the appropriately named Quick Fit Euro.
Right. Okay. Put me off now. Right. Who wants to move this? Charlie, do you want to move this? You happy with this? Yeah. Second, Councillor Burton. Everybody happy with it as it is? Excellent bit of work. Carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Rob. Item 6, draft budget. Page 66.
Redeclare my personal interest, Chairman.
Yep, got that, Carl. Right, purpose of report. This report summarises the work undertaken to date on the proposed revenue budget 26-27, updates capital programme, medium-time financial plan for the period 26 to 29. The report also incorporates the outcome of the public consultation following the committee's consideration of growth items, savings and fees and charges proposals 26-27. Members are asked to receive the report and submit any further recommendations for amendment to Cabinet. Resolved that the comments of this committee are considered by Cabinet at its meeting on the 2nd of February, which they will recommend the final budget to full council. Charlotte.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, this report is a culmination of our work since the summer, and as the Chair already noted, incorporates the proposed growth and savings for the coming year, detailed fees and charges schedules, which is the first time you'll have seen the detailed schedules updated. Up until now, we've just sort of talked about the principles that we'd be applying to those schedules, the budget summary itself, capital programme, and the MTFP. I'll just take the opportunity now to apologise to the committee for some of the papers needing to be updated and the late paper. There's a lot of work in here, but apologies for the delay in some of those being tabled. Some key things to note. We have managed to balance the budget for 26-27, despite large pressures in relation to homelessness and temporary accommodation and the introduction of the garden waste scheme, plus, of course, general inflationary pressures that we see across our service areas. You'll have noted in the report and in the MTFP, our settlement position was better than anticipated, and that has certainly helped us close the gap for 26-27. But it should also be noted that the comprehensive savings exercise that was undertaken this year through the budget challenge process and previous budget savings exercises, you'll recall over £2 million was taken out of the budget in the last financial year, and there were savings in the prior year to that and savings in the current financial year. So those have all contributed towards us being able to close the budget gap this financial year. But it's very positive to be able to close it without drawing from reserves for the first time in a few years. We've also undertaken a review of every single budget line, and many thanks to heads of service and finance colleagues for the really detailed work that was undertaken to bring us to this point. We've had some gains this year. The triennial revaluation of the pension scheme improved the position because it reduced our contribution rates. And as I say, we have the savings from prior years as well. Some risks that the committee should be aware of and consider in the setting of this budget. Inflation and interest rates, as outlined in the covering report and the appendices, always worthy of consideration. They do appear to be on a downward trend currently, so that's positive, but worthy of thought. Staff pay inflation covered in paragraph 22 of the report. The budget and the MTFP work on an assumption of 3% plus an uplift in relation to incremental uplifts. But as you'll note in paragraph 22, we are now subject to national pay terms, and the current ask is significantly higher than we have built into this base budget, and would create an additional financial pressure of 920,000 if agreed. So clearly we are some way adrift of being in a position to be able to afford that ask. However, all public sector bodies will be in that similar position, so I suspect there's a long negotiation ahead on that one. Other areas just to consider and be aware of includes the devolution of assets. We have made some provision in this budget funded from flexible capital receipts for the work that's required around devolution of assets, but we have not removed anything from our asset base for the 26-27 budget presented to you. Our element of the council tax is proposed to rise by £6.30 to £216.95. The paper also includes the budget consultation findings, which are summarised in the report and the associated appendix. To date, we haven't made any changes to this budget as a result of that consultation, although that may change after your debate. That's the purpose of this debate. The only thing that's been removed at the moment relates to the recreational vehicle parks proposal, which we have removed because further feasibility work identified that it wasn't realistic to bring forward for 26-27, so that has now been removed from the draft budget. But we await your input on the broader list. The capital programme remains largely as previously reported, but it does include some new grant awards that we've received, and they're outlined in paragraph 53. Just a few other areas to note. Movement in financing costs is fairly significant, both compared to 24-25 and in subsequent financial years. This primarily relates to diminishing cash balances due to capital spend that the council is holding, and in turn loans that it needs to take up, including loans to service the housing company. So there's quite a lot of movement in interest payable and interest receivable, both in this budget and over the term of the MTFP, that's worthy of note. In order to arrive at a balanced budget, I have needed to incorporate the interest that will be receivable from the housing company, because we need that interest in order to service the debt that we have raised to provide to the housing company. I have also incorporated into this budget items related to the productivity plan that full council previously considered, and that includes costs related to devolution, some cover for local government reorganisation, so those areas. In terms of special expense, I have incorporated some updates related to the special expense, but not removed the special expense as a result of devolution of assets, because I don't anticipate those assets being devolved in the early part of this financial year. They may be devolved in the latter part of this financial year, but we need to be able to continue to serve those assets in 26-27, which is why they remain incorporated in the budget. And just finally, in terms of the medium-term financial plan, this document seeks to take a high-level, longer-term view, and it covers the period from 26-27 up to 28-29. I acknowledge that we may not be here in 28-29, but I've incorporated that year just for the purposes of planning and, of course, in case we are still here. This document helps us align our finances to the council plan, and it addresses global and local issues affecting our financial position. It does model some different financial assumptions, and for the first time I've incorporated a reserves policy in that document. You'll see over the course of that period we are able to maintain our position within our reserves envelope, but only just, and there will of course be some challenging decisions in that picture for the council to take over the remaining term. I'll pause there. Thank you, Chair, and take any questions.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. I think from my notes here, I think the one that sort of highlights is balanced budget without drawing on reserves. So we'll take that. Before I ask for other members, can I just make a request on Canberra's winter payments for car parks, that we keep them the same as last year? It's only like 5p. It's gone from £1.50 to £1.55, and £4 to £4.15, which would be a pain to collect. But Canberra seems to have been under the cosh for the last 3 months with this negative publicity on these bio beads and everything else, and I had a lively parish council meeting last Tuesday evening. So I just, if we could do that for a 12-month as a gesture, I don't think it would cost us too much. Hopefully it wouldn't, but yeah, if that's all right.
Not a decision for me, it's a decision for the committee to consider. Perhaps we'll hold off and see if there are other recommendations and whether we wish to take them together. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Right, now what have we got? Right, I'll see John, but right, I'll go room first. Councillor Byrne, Terry.
Thanks, Chairman. First and foremost, congratulations on producing a balanced budget. You know, it's almost the sort of juggling that qualifies you for a circus act. We've got two big things, the two sort of probably unknowns in terms of cost is local government reorganisation and food waste. Do you anticipate any further assistance from Westminster coming down on those two areas? It strikes me that many authorities are making, screaming loud and long about it, and Westminster have been known to give in and give us a bit more money. So do you think there's any joy on the horizon there at all?
I mean, hard to say without a crystal ball, but we have assumed that the PEPR, which is extended producer responsibility provision, will continue over the term of the MTFP at its current level. There hasn't been any confirmation that I've seen about any other food waste support that we'll receive. We'll obviously keep the committee updated if there is, but we have assumed that it would continue because it's a very substantial grant. It's 1.3 million, so obviously without it, we really would, really would be quite serious to the financial position of the council. In terms of local government reorganisation, we did receive a small amount of money for the business case. There hasn't been any confirmation that there will be further funding, so it's very difficult to say. I'd like to think that there would be some financial support provided because the costs of it are likely to be fairly significant across the East Sussex picture. We've made a small provision in the productivity plan line for backfilling of existing staff, but that won't be sufficient to cover all of the costs of local government reorganisation. There is an option potentially to use flexible capital receipts to fund it, or possibly to capitalise the costs of local government reorganisation and take borrowing for that funding. However, as I've already mentioned, the council has quite a high level of borrowing need now, and we need to service that debt. So I guess, and I don't have a definitive answer, unfortunately. It's going to be a watch and see brief as the costs emerge and the government make further announcements about funding of both of those things.
Thanks for that. We can but live in hope.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to echo Councillor Byrne's comments about what a relief to actually have a budget at the beginning of the year where we're not drawing down on reserves. I think that is amazing, and I think you should have a round of applause, but maybe we'll save that for later. Is it the right moment to talk about fees and charges? Is that part of it? I just wondered why there was such disparity between Mount Street in Battle and Lower Market Car Park in the annual permits. It's 638 in Mount Street and 472 in Lower Market. I wondered if there was any particular reason for that. I mean, I don't want to make a fuss because I do appreciate our annual rates are considerably lower than they are in Rye. Sorry. But I just wondered why there was such disparity. No. And even the hourly rate, it is more in Mount Street, and we've taken away the toilets. So there is quite a lot of, not unrest, but there's a lot of disgruntledness that, we're paying more to park in Mount Street and there aren't toilets. And I just wondered if that could be looked at. These figures are before the Ringo add on there a little bit as well, aren't they? Because that makes a difference. I just wondered, can I ask, please, Anna, do we know how many people use the pay point to pay for their car parking now?
I don't know, but I can find out for you. Lindsay will have all of that information. Yeah, and I can also find out about the difference in the permit costs between the two car parks as well.
Thank you very much.
I think historically, unless I'm totally off grid, but I thought that the lower car park was unmade. Is that right? It never used to be tarmac, so it was always cheaper for some reason because it wasn't tarmac. But then you could argue about most of the roads now, couldn't you?
Yes. It has always been tarmacked. If I may answer, please. It has always been tarmacked. It has been in a disgraceful state for the last 5 years, but in the last month, it's been totally resurfaced. But it is our long stay car park, so people can pay, a less amount to park there all day, although frustratingly, we cannot get East Sussex County Council to allow us to amend the street sign to inform people of that.
Thank you. Well, if you'll look into that, Anna, with Lindsay, cool, that'd be good. I'd better take John, so you get annoyed. John? Are you there?
Yes, I begin really with echoing what the councillors have already said about the enormous amount of work that has gone into this and the success in delivering a balanced budget this year. I do congratulate Charlotte and her team on that effort. I think the local government settlement may have been an improvement on what we anticipated, but it's not actually taking full account of the costs of delivery of rural services and rural deprivation. So although we did quite well on the urban deprivation, and we are slightly better off this year, the next 2 years are going to be increasingly difficult, and rural services will remain much more expensive to deliver than urban services. I think all the rural areas have a real cause for grievance. There are huge risks here, of course, because the pay settlement has not yet been concluded, and that could blow us off course, which really is why I remain concerned about the reserves position. I think when you look at the medium-term financial forecasts, they're rather depressing and suggest that we're probably going to get a rap on the knuckles from our auditors. They said at audit committee they expected to start rebuilding our reserves. We're not going to be in a position to do that. And so I suspect we are in some danger of running our reserves down to the barest minimum. And when you look at what the pay settlement could cost us this year, in worst case, we would have barely the reserves to cope with that by the end of the period. So I think a very good holding operation this year, some cause for concern in the next two. Of course, Charlotte's quite right. We may not be here budgeting for 27, for 2028, 29. We will be here obviously for 27, 28. And that brings me to another concern, which is I think we need to get on with devolving those things which we think the county council is not going. Well, it won't be the county council. It'll be the unitary council is not going to finance. They're going to be in dire financial straits. And of course, they will have veto power once the shadow authority is in being. So we really do need, I think, to push on with identifying those assets that are likely either to be sweated or those services which are likely to be dispensed with. And we need to get them down to parish and town councils as fast as possible. I'd like that to be minuted because it seems to me my one slight quarrel with Charlotte is I thought she was suggesting less of an urgent feeling than I have about that. On the detail of fees and charges, I would like to be reassured. I meant to check it before the meeting. I apologise for not doing so. Are we still making some payment to the Rye Harbour Nature Reserve? Because I'd like to preserve a line in the budget rather than lose a line altogether there. It's less the sum than the fact that we actually are making a contribution, which worries me. I think that's pretty well all I would want to say at the moment, but end again by saying what a splendid job Charlotte and her team have done. I think in very difficult circumstances, they've delivered a very good budget. Thank you very much indeed.
John, anything you want to come back on there, Charlotte?
Yeah, if I might, just want to reiterate again, very much team effort. Everyone in the organisation very involved in this budget. in terms of devolution, sorry, I didn't mean to suggest there wasn't any hurry, but we have over 60 assets to consider and a process to take them through. So really all I was trying to express there was that it will take time to move these assets through the process and them be finally devolved through to the town and parish council and therefore removed from our budgeting process. So it's not that that work is not happening at pace, and it's not that it's not resourced or a focus for us, because it is all of those things. It's just that there's a lot of assets, and therefore sheer volume means that it will take some time to move through. In terms of Rye Harbour Nature Reserve, so this budget, as it is presented to you, it removes that budget line, the £1,000, because that was the proposal on the savings schedule. You'll have seen the budget consultation feedback around that. It's up to the committee. You can propose, obviously, back to Cabinet that you would like to see that budget reinstated and not removed from this.
I would like to come back to that one because I'm happy to see it reduced, but I'd like to see a line preserved in the budget. So I will move an amendment on that later on.
Well, I might beat you to it, John, because it's in my ward. So I might propose that as with my other one of the winter fees for Canberra car parking in Central, and maintain the £1,000 for the nature reserve. To be honest.
Or even if it were reduced to 500, it keeps the line alive and the contribution alive.
Yeah. So we do that. Right, I've got, right, now I had Councillor Burton. Did you? Yeah, I have Councillor Burton, then I'll go Councillor Maynard. Councillor Burton.
Okay, attempting to be as organised as possible, and we've had a lot of documents to go through. If I could just go, first of all, to the responses from the public document, and one of the items, not a huge number of people who responded, I note, is on 3E, Canberra Welcome Centre Cleaning and Maintenance, 69% opposed that. I'm querying, you've got a centre that needs cleaning and upgrading, it's new, and I'm a bit unsure how there is even a debate because we've got to clean it and maintain it. So that one I was surprised to see, but where it features on your budget, what you have proposed following that outcome, I'm not sure, Charlotte. I've got a couple of comments after that, please, Chair.
Yep, so that particular growth item is incorporated in the draft budget that is proposed to you, but because it was a growth item, it is one of the questions we asked the public their views on. I can't speak for why that was the result of the consultation, just that it was.
I can't either. Maybe they thought it was something extra. I don't know. Anyway, then I just got some comments about car parking in Appendix E. And this probably isn't for now because it's quite a big thought, but it's about equality and heavy vehicles paying the same as a small vehicle in a car park. It's more wear and tear, and it could help people who use smaller cars to have a benefit of a smaller parking fee or a larger parking fee for a 4x4. And although it's an item for consultation with the public, what would they think? I'd like to highlight it now. Any of these things take a while, if that's okay. And then the other one also slightly is the bulky waste charges. And I noticed that elsewhere there is concessions for, I can't remember which one it was for, but I wondered if there was a way that we could get people who are on a low income to have some benefit, make it a little bit easier for them to do bulky waste recycling, please. And whether that's a can do now, if my colleagues agree, or it's something for another time. I'll leave it up to you. Thank you.
I'm not sure if I'm right or not. My understanding is that the county council are looking at on-street parking. You put in your number plate and it calculates whether you've got a gas guzzler or a lightweight vehicle and charges you accordingly. I don't agree with that, but there it is. The leader of the county council drives a Range Rover V8, so he'd have to pay a bit extra when he's not there, wouldn't he? Seemed ironic, but there it is. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Just a procedural issue first. I mean, Councillor Barnes did reference the fact that he might move or second. I believe if we're not in the room, we can't move or second, so it would have to go through you as chairman, I believe. Just like to echo, I think, the comments that have been made about, obviously, Charlotte's endeavours this year. A huge effort at the moment, whether you're on district or county, and I've declared that a personal interest, upper tier or lower tier authority, are really challenging times to try and keep council tax down because everybody is affected, but obviously the additional challenge of budget pressures as we go forward, knowing that central government isn't dishing out large grants and hasn't been for several years. I think that it's really important, as I say, to acknowledge the good work that Charlotte and her team have done. I also think, though, and I just want to actually amplify the point that Councillor Barnes made with regard to rural communities. I think that there have been, as we frankly warned, some issues around community grants this year. And I just think that I just want to highlight how hugely important to rural communities the community grant scheme is. And indeed, when I led the council, we certainly also gave grants outside the community grant scheme for large projects in the rural areas in particular. And I think that it would be a false economy in any way to rein that back in any way, shape or form, because as I was speaking only the other day at one of my parish councils, it's an absolute fact that when we come to the table, other funding sources are found pretty quickly. It's the district council aren't seen as a cash cow, and frankly, in terms of things like community hubs, village halls, various other facilities that attract larger grants, they're absolutely essential not only to the rural way of life, but in terms of actually saving public bodies money in the longer term. That collegiate working needs to continue. So I just want to highlight that because I think it's really important, just as much perhaps for Bexhill and Rye, but in terms of the rural villages, how hugely important community grants have been over the years. We've given a lot of money over the years to various organisations across the whole of our 199 square miles. But it's really important to keep that going because, as I say, it enables rural communities, not just parish councils, but community groups and sporting groups as well for sports facilities, to actually get things done in their rural communities that really matter to their local communities. So it's not so much a line in the sand, it's just we absolutely need to continue working with parish councils and community groups to take their aspirations forward and actually deliver those aspirations because, as I say, they do genuinely save us money in the longer term in terms of how they help the local communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Clark, Charlie.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say a few positive things about Rother, because we're talking about the proposed increase in the Rother council tax. But I've said this before. We provide 63 services to the residents of Rother for just over 200 quid. I think I'm in Band C, that's 200 quid a month, that's £2,000 a year, and we're charging just over 200 quid. So when I talk to my residents in my ward, I always tell them that. But we've always had a steady hand on how I'm in Rother, and our council tax, the services that we provide is terrific. So, you know, I think we should always remember that.
Yep, well said, Charlie. It is well said. Agree with that. Right, so John can't move from being in a remote position, so I will do it for him, if you like. I will move that the line in the budget for the Rye Harbour Nature Reserve remains, if I can request that. and the car parking charges on the winter tariff, which is mainly used by local people in the winter, to take their dogs for a walk on the beach or whatever, or just go and get some fresh air. And I should get fresh air on day like today, it'd be flipping freezing down there. But the budget stays the same, the charges stays the same as last year. Probably end up being cheaper for us because it won't cost us a fortune to change the signs. So there's always a positive. Anyone else got anything? Councillor Cook?
Happy to second your proposal.
Thank you very much. Any others? Any other thoughts that people want to put forward to Cabinet? Councillor Burton?
Well, echoing what I said just now, is that if the bulky waste charges could be looked at to see if we could have, I haven't got a solution, but that we could look at, and there may be time to build that into the budget if it's not too expensive. Charlotte. Thank you. Can I include that in the motion that it be investigated? Thank you.
Okay, can you switch your machinery off, please? Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm right. You might know, Anna. The bulky waste just about is at cost, isn't it? That we don't make any money on it. It literally covers the cost, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Any lower and we'll be losing money on the contract cost on the bulky waste collections.
Okay, but you can look at it and see what's what. Happy with that? All right. All those in favour with our very small amendment, and thanks to Charlotte and the team for the work they put in, and like I said, I balanced the budget without drawing on reserves. So, all those in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Charlotte. Moving on, what have we got now? Item 7, key performance targets, pages 109 to 116. Key performance indicators, to consider proposals for measuring the Council's corporate performance 26-27. Resolve that Cabinet be requested to approve the new key performance target indicators, which I think are pretty much the same as they were. Anna.
Thank you. So it is a review of the key performance indicators and performance monitoring for the Council for the new Council year. My proposal is to keep most things the same. In terms of the reporting, I'm proposing to keep the format of the reporting the same. So you get the commentary on each of the KPIs, whether we've met them or if we're under target or if we're exceeding target. Also, where I can find benchmarking data, I'm going to include that. We started that about 6 months ago, and where I can find anything, I'm putting that in there so that we've got some context about how we're performing. Also, that we'll continue with the annual State of the District report to give that wider view on the environment in which we operate in Rother. And through discussions with heads of service and our corporate leadership team, we're only proposing to make one change this year, and this is for the KPI N5 under environmental health, and it's the number of fly tips issued. There wasn't actually a target for this particular KPI, it was more of a monitoring target. It's felt that this one doesn't really add very much value to what we're doing. We don't have a dedicated enforcement contractor. We can still do fly tip fines, but it was one that we were kind of just watching. So the proposal here is to remove that because it isn't really an indicator of our performance particularly. But it is interesting to note that there hasn't actually been a particular rise in fly tips in this area. And when they do happen, our contractor is actually very good at clearing them. We do always look to see if there is any evidence, though, when there is a fly tip. But it is increasingly quite difficult to find that evidence. So really that's my proposal, that there is just that change to N5.
Okay. Councillor Burt, I know you was keen to identify climate change KPIs. I did send out a briefing note yesterday. I'm not sure if you see it. But officers have been looking at several options, but the information coming from further up the tree takes a long time to come down. So I think that's sort of what makes it difficult in that sort of, nationally stuff's not updated every 6 months or so, it's updated every year or 18 months. So it sort of makes it awkward to have something to work to, doesn't it? Is that right, Anna? Can you confirm that?
Yes, with Councillor Burton's help, we've been looking at various different things. The last one we looked at was whether we could use the WWF postcode information. And this would sort of show you for each postcode, what the score is. But it isn't updated very often, and you have to put each postcode within our Rother district in separately, which is quite unwieldy to, get any results from that.
Okay, Councillor Burton?
Yeah, yes, I have had some communication with the officers about this, and I thank them for their input, and I acknowledge totally that it can be complex. However, looking at a later report that we've got today, the words on the local plan are reduce the district's carbon emissions by 2030 to zero. We're halfway through. So that I do think this effort of trying to look for ways across our organisation, because we're talking about the district, not just talking about this authority. So I think it's an important topic that we shouldn't let drop, how we can motivate and show our successes or kick us in the backside, in one way or the other.
Yeah, you could. I had a mischievous thought there. I thought, well, as an organisation's emissions will be zero by 2030 because we won't be there. But it's probably not the right way of going about it. Just to ban yourself. I'm sure that Anna's got the message that if there's anything that crops up, you can do it. Everybody happy with the proposal as is? Pretty much. Yeah.
Paul?
Yeah. Oh, John. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's quite important that we remember that what we're doing here is looking at key performance indicators for what is under our control. What I think at some stage the committee should also discuss is how satisfied they were with the annual report, which of course contains some of the kind of statistics that we've just been discussing. So that will be the appropriate place if you can get some kind of figure on climate change and consequent reduction of emissions. That will be the place to do it. It's also the place where I think we probably need to put some of the public health statistics because they really don't fit very neatly into a KPI framework, but it's useful for us to keep an eye, for example, on housing standards and things like that, which are highly relevant to longevity of people's lives. So there are a whole range of things which I think we need to look at on an annual basis, but they're not all within our control. And but they are an important way of assessing the overall health and state of the economy in Rother.
Yeah, that's right. Does Anna do that?
Yes, we've also got the council.
I declare with personal interest, Chairman, as Councillor Barnes has brought up public health, same as an executive member of East Sussex. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Anna, you deal with the annual report, so thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we can have a look. We in last year's State of the District report, so that's the context in which we operate, we did include more about climate, and we did include more to follow the themes of our council plan. So yes, absolutely, if we can find some more information, then we'll absolutely include it. It is getting more difficult to find good information, because central government aren't doing, at the moment, there isn't the source information that we would normally use, but we'll certainly have a look.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Right, Terry.
Thanks, Chair. I'm the rother representative on the Health and Overview Scrutiny Committee at County. Now, we get presentations from the NHS, so maybe a summary, I know it's extra work, but there is a lot of information there about health in rural areas, in areas like Bexhill certainly, and perhaps we could, some sort of snapshot or dashboard of those figures, just as a brief line, and to make sure that there's no read across from things that we're doing and monitoring that are having an effect over there. So it would just top and tail what we're doing with the health, because I agree with Councillor Barnes that we do need to keep a track on how our performance as a district authority is affecting the health of our residents.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Thank you. If I may, Chair, to Anna, please. Anna, I know you said you wanted to take the fly tips out of the KPIs, but it's just occurred to me that now we have to book a slot to go to a public amenity. Could that also increase the number of fly tips? And I wonder if we could just be let know if there is a sudden increase, due to that. I know that's beyond our responsibilities, but I do think it would be an interesting factor.
Yes, through working with Councillor Burton, we've been looking at what is reported to the Joint Waste Committee in terms of waste and recycling. And so I think they do collect quite a lot of information there. So they would collect information about fly tips. They'll probably collect information about food waste and the take-up of that, and also how much we are recycling. Well, they do collect how much we're recycling and how much refuse there is. So I think we will be able to get information through the Joint Waste Committee. I think it's more for me to think about how do I get that to you in terms of context about all of that. But I'll certainly know about the fly tips.
Thank you very much.
Right, okay, so resolve that we request Cabinet to approve these. As they
You have Councillor Clean on the screen.
Yes. Right, Councillor Colleen.
Yes, sorry, it was just to add that I sit on the Health and Wellbeing Board at East Sussex, and probably I could get to Anna copies of slides of a recent meeting that I was at, where the Director of Public Health was giving information, and we probably could pull some out. Well, I know there are some that can be pulled out from Rother's perspective as well.
Yep, Anna gives a thumbs up to that. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Right, so recommendation resolved that Cabinet be requested to approve new key performance indicators 26-27 be as agreed and set out in Appendix A. Someone to move that? Councillor Cook.
Happy to move.
Second that. Councillor Byrne. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anna. Item 8, that's right, isn't it? Yeah.
Redeclare my personal interest, Chairman.
Yeah. Item 8, consider refreshed Council Plan 25 to 29's Action Plan Annual Progress Report. Resolved that this committee the refreshed Council Plan, its Action Plan and its Annual Progress Report for 25 be considered and provide any comments for consideration by Cabinet to enable full Council to approve the refreshed plan on the 23rd of February. To approve the equality objectives for consultation. Laura.
Thank you, Chair. This report does a number of things. First of all, it looks back on what's been achieved over the last year. It was quite sad, really, that we just adopted this plan and then we found out about LGR. So it has meant that we've had to look forward as well and really think carefully about what we can achieve in the years that we have left as Rother District Council. But it is also about making sure we're articulating our priorities to the successor authority, and I think this document is really important in doing that. So that there are a number of appendices to this report. The first one is, as I say, a refreshed council plan, which considers the context of LGR and what can be achieved in the next 2 years. Appendix B looks at what's been achieved over the last year in terms of the action plan. And there's a nice report that goes with that in Appendix C, which is the annual report for Rother. And this is very much a more accessible version, I think, sort of focusing on the main projects that have been delivered during the last financial year. And we very much want to share that with town and parish councils, which I know are important when they're reporting back to their council meetings. We've also looked at the success measures, and I'd just like to echo what Councillor Barnes was saying there around being clear what we are directly responsible for in terms of our performance and what we kind of measure to see how perhaps some of our interventions are having an impact on those broader economic and social factors that we need to monitor as well. And I would just say that we do use East Sussex in figures, and we are aware of the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment that's put together by Public Health, and we do call on this data when we're considering what are the most important measures for us to be keeping a focus on. So that's set out in Appendix D. The Chair mentioned quality objectives, and this is something that we have to do on a regular basis. We have to review our equality objectives as part of the Equality Act 2010. So we wanted to do it as part of this document rather than a separate strategy, because a bit like climate, we think it's really important that our equality objectives are embedded in everything that we do. We do need to consult on them though. They are set out in Appendix E, and the plan is to take this to the Equality, Diversity, Inclusion Network and make sure that we're focusing on the right things, and we'll do that in consultation with Councillor Delaney, who has the portfolio for equalities. So really it's just making sure you're comfortable with what's been reported and any further comments for consideration by Cabinet. I would just like to say that all of this hard work hasn't been done by me. It's been done by Alice Nolan, who unfortunately can't be here tonight, but I'm sure you'll agree she's done a fantastic job in pulling all this together and has really made it accessible. And there's an awful lot of information in there. She worked very hard to put this together. And I don't know, Anna, have you got anything to add to that?
I have, thank you. There are a couple of projects that are going on in Rother this year, and I think it would be really good if you could endorse that they're included in the action plan. So we've got the Town of Culture applications. Bexhill are going to be making an application through the Delaware Pavilion and the Bexhill Neighbourhood Board, and I think Battle are as well, potentially, Rye, but I'm not sure. The other one is 1066 Country Marketing, are looking at events around the Bayeux Tapestry and also the Year of the Normans. And they're going to be applying for funding to do various things. And if they do, we would become the accountable body. So these two, you know, just to get your thoughts really about including them in the action plan, three really significant things. And I think it would be great if we could get them in the action plan. They wouldn't be for Rother to deliver these projects, but Rother would just be supporting and in some respects acting as the accountable body.
Well, it would seem to make sense, wouldn't it? So, I think that would be a good idea. I was sort of getting a sense of deja vu when I was looking through this. I thought, I'm sure I've seen this. It wasn't long ago, was it? I think we should support this. Now, John, you've got your hand up. John?
Yes, we've got, I think Mary may want to speak as well, but I think we've got this rather odd concept now. We are the accountable body for a number of bodies that actually are taking actions that will actually deliver the projects, and we have a limited influence. Sometimes it's quite considerable, obviously, because we do nominate trustees to the Delaware Trust, and we have more of a say there. But I'm not quite clear what influence we have on Sidley, for example, on the project there. I'm glad it's going well. And yet we have to account for that. So maybe we need a new section in this corporate plan where we report on what is going on by the bodies for whom we are the accountable body. I think that's worth looking at.
Can I just come in, Anna, just to ask, what did you say? Can of culture? But if that is what it was, can you just explain what it is? My second point is that I think we don't do quite enough advertising of events that are going on in Bexhill, in the northern areas of the of Rother. So it would be better, really, to just look at the way we advertise things.
I think it's a town of culture. So, you know, you get your city of culture, which I think currently is Bradford. You have a town of culture, which could be, I don't know where that is at the moment.
Well, I'm sure we'd all like to know about that out here in the sticks. So if we could possibly just, maybe something sent to the parish clerk. You may do that already, but I mean, we just need to have that information to know that it's going on and attend.
I don't think our communications people make quite enough use of the various e-bulletins around the area, which are a very good way of communicating.
Okay. Anna, you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we do have the Rother bulletin that goes out by email every month, and we would encourage anybody that knows of an event that they want, to publish widely across Rother. I think there's just an email address that you can submit it to, and we are generally very happy to publish any events that are going on.
Yeah, but that's not quite the same as somebody who's organising an event in Bexhill infusing about it to the northern area, because otherwise we won't know what it's all about.
I have no idea on that. Do you want me to? Go on, you have.
Well, that's just my feeling about it. It's not always great fun hearing about what a terrific success something was if we didn't even know that it was going on.
So just to clarify about the Town of Culture, this I think is a new initiative by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. So, and the chair is absolutely right, it's kind of like City of Culture, only it's for towns. And I think there's been quite a lot, I think we've been all trying to work out what it means. And I think these ideas are coming from, not necessarily from Rother, but we are enabling other people to support them if they're making bids to be Town of Culture. So it's just a bid process at the moment. It isn't a series of events. There will obviously be a selection process, and we will be lending our support in how we express our support for it in our council plan. But I do have to be clear that there isn't any money from Rother. There isn't very much capacity from Rother to support with these things, unfortunately. But where we can lend our support is for funding. Not funding directly, but for example, Anna mentioned the 1066 partnership, and they, because of their status, they can't be the accountable body for funding, and I think they're minded to apply. Is it the lottery fund? Is it the Heritage Fund? It's the Heritage Fund. So in order to enable them to apply for this funding, we need to be the accountable body. So that doesn't come without its work. I think that's worth saying, because there's always monitoring around this and always considerations from a financial perspective. So, it is actually quite a commitment to be the accountable body. But I would just like to come back to Councillor Barnes's point about really picking out the things where we are accountable body status. I think that's really complicated to do because quite a few of those projects are funded by ROTHA, they're funded by the Levelling Up Fund, they're funded through SIL. There's a variety of funding sources that go into, for example, Heart of Sidley. They've had funding from a number of sources. But perhaps what we could do in our action plan is be really, really clear about where we are directly delivering things, where we are working in partnership, and where we are enabling or supporting. And I'd say something like 1066 and their funding application is our enabling, supporting role. And I think we could go through the action plan and be very, very clear what ROTHA's role is. Does that work, Councillor Barnes?
That would seem to be very sensible.
We take that as a yes.
Yes.
Good. Well, can we as a committee pass on our thanks to Alice for sort of reviewing and amending this plan? Councillor Burton, Sue.
Just a couple of comments. One is on page 120 for the green to the core, and I'd like to add in on number 2, less waste and a thriving local circular economy. I think that's important to get in, that we're local. We're trying to do things round and round here. And the nature one, which is number 5, strengthen support for the protection and recovery of nature. And why this change is proposed, because we've passed the rights of tree motion, the rights of river motion, and we need to, I think, strengthen that up to protect what we've already got. Thank you. And I just had one final comment on the actual very attractively displayed document, further on, the actual local plan. And when we're talking about the award-winning places, don't forget that Bexhill got the Southeast in Bloom award for 3 gold award for 3 consecutive years, and I think it's champion or something. So I think that deserves a mention if at all possible. Thank you.
Right. Oh, Councillor Cook.
Sorry, just very quickly. I did mention at our briefing about my concern about changing the wording. Sorry, I looked up the thing. Under Live Well Locally, I realise now, looking at the proper plan, it says what we want to achieve. And item 3, what we want to achieve, more people have active lifestyles. I can't help feeling there might be another word we could add in there to express it a bit better. What we want to achieve is more people to have access to and enjoy active lifestyles, something like that, because that sounds more like a statement and it doesn't really make sense. What we had before was encourage people to keep active, including participation in sports and recreational activities. And I realise that's quite a lengthy statement, but I think if we can find a happy medium between the two, I'd be really grateful. And I need some guidance, please, from you, Bhuta. I'm chairing the local 2027 committee, so I don't know whether I should abstain from voting on the council becoming the accountability or whether that's irrelevant. It's personal, not pecuniary.
I'm going to have to come back to you on that one and give that some thought. Is that a decision that you would want now?
It's just advice, really.
Give me a moment, let me come back to you on that.
You can abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thomas.
Chairman.
Hang on, John, hang on.
I think I need to declare my position as chair of the housing company and also as vice chair of Bexhill in Bloom. I'd like to thank Councillor Burton for bringing up the great success of Bexhill in Bloom. The fact that we won gold in Champion of Champions means that we are literally at the top of the organisations of that kind in the whole south-east of the country, south and south-east of this country. That's an amazing achievement. When I go in other places where they have had equal or even less success in competition, I see this being shouted from the rooftops. And so I would like to see more emphasis on publicising this achievement by the Council and all other people who possibly could be. But whilst I have the floor, I'd just like to say I very much approve of most of the rewordings in this report. I do like them. I particularly like in the housing that you're saying sustainable, inclusive housing, but you have lost the phrase improving housing quality. And I'd like that reinstated if that's okay with everybody. Yeah. But on the whole, I think these rewordings are very good. They kind of make it more solution and outcome focused. I think that's a really good thing. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, John?
Yes, I'd just like to look at outcome 4. It seems to me that we've written into the local plan a policy towards pure water for the first time, but it's very important we realise what an important stretch of water is there as a refuge during winter weather for some of our most threatened species, common gull and black-headed gull preeminent amongst them. It is a much more important environmental site than I think anybody has recognised historically. We're doing a bit about that, which is quite nice. I'd also like something in about the historic landscape, where we're winning a lot of appeals. I think our planners are actually doing a very good job. We mentioned the local plan, but I think we need to recognise that we have the outstanding medieval landscape in the whole of Europe. And it is very important that we do conserve it wherever we can. We often think in terms of the historic environment, in terms of buildings, but field systems and other landscape features are very important indeed, and we do an awful lot through planning to protect it.
Thank you. Got all that? Yep. Good. Right. Well, with that, which you'll assume you'll take the cabinet.
Yes, so we'll take these comments through the minutes, I guess, to cabinet.
Yep. So with that, have someone to move that. Councillor Burton, you happy to move? Or no, Councillor Legg, happy to move? Yep. Councillor Burton to second. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously with one abstention from Councillor Cook, who is unsure, not of the plan, but of her position as a chairman.
Of the local facilitating group for the whole of 2027.
Yep.
The year of the Normans.
Year of the Normans. Okay.
Sorry, Chair, I was going to say you didn't have to abstain because this is a policy decision per se, but if you feel more comfortable in abstaining.
No, I don't want to vote for it.
All right. She's now voted in favour, so we're unanimous. Right, excellent. Thank you very much. Item 9. Progress report on task and finish groups. Report be noted. Review of the recommendations of the Health and Wellbeing Task and Finish Group be undertaken and reported to this committee. There was one task and finish group which I will bring in Councillor Colleen later with regard to planning enforcement. Who's taking
That's
this?
me.
Oh, it's Anna again. Anna.
Yeah, it's me. So at the last last overview in Scrutiny Committee, I was asked to have a look at the recommendations from all the recent task and finish groups. So I've included at Appendix A a summary of all the task and finish groups, what the recommendations were, and an update on those recommendations. You will see from that all of the groups, with the exception of the one you just mentioned, Chair, the local, which one did you just mention? The local enforcement plan one. They've all been disbanded. So going through all the recommendations and progress made on them, everything with the exception of the health and wellbeing task and finish group, all the recommendations have been completed and implemented. It really is only the health and wellbeing one. It should have had a review after 12 months and then another review after 3 years, but that didn't happen. From speaking with officers, it seems that the reason that recommendations haven't been taken forward is because no one officer was given the responsibility to take it forward. And even at the moment within Rother, we don't have dedicated resources for health and wellbeing. We do have people for active Rother and also for healthy ageing or ageing healthily. But we're not resourced for that work. Having said that, I think it would be really good if we could undertake a review of the recommendations of the Health and Wellbeing Task and Finish Group. Councillor Cook, you've kindly offered to work with me on that, which I'm very grateful for. And I'll be working with members of my team to come back to this committee with a more detailed update on the recommendations of that group. I think that's it by and large. I suppose one thing that I would add is when I do come back to this committee, I will just take into account the fact that we are going into local government reorganisation, and also some of the organisations that are mentioned in the recommendations no longer exist. So it's a bit of a different environment that we're working with. So we will need to have a look at what we can achieve going into LGR and also how we are currently operating with our partners. It will take me a few months to get back to you, but we'll work together if that's okay, and I'll come back to you as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. Councillor Colleen, to save me reading out your emails to me from earlier today, do you want to just explain the planning and enforcement bit to everybody? I think we've sort of negated the need for a task and finish group. If you wanted to explain, thank you very much. As you sat there listening to us for the last hour and a half.
Yes, no, certainly, yes. As my note to you this morning, following the conversation you and I had in December, Chair, it was really just to say that I had a conversation, or have had regular conversations with Mike Hughes, obviously head of planning, and he's taken on the task of rewriting the enforcement plan. But of course, with LGR, with the local plan priority particularly, it's had to take slightly a back seat. But hopefully in the next week or so, he will have a draft to me. And then my idea was that if I send the agreed draft to you, you can then circulate it to Overview and Scrutiny colleagues. And hopefully that will do away with the need for a task and finish group if you're satisfied with the outcome of the plan that he produces. And obviously within there, we've got improvements anyway in enforcement because we've got the new member of staff that started, etc., etc. So really it was just to say this, hopefully you could bring it and it could be agreed at your next meeting, which is at the beginning of March. Hope that helps.
Yep. Thank you very much. Yeah, our meeting is on the 16th of March. Mary, you was the sort of chairman of this non-group that never really got going. I'm assuming you've got your hand up for that reason.
I have indeed, because I have tried very hard on a number of occasions to say to Mike Hughes, come on, give us some information. We left it that what was going to happen when I last spoke to him was that we were going, because obviously we'd set up a working party, that he was going to, with Matt Worsley's help, he was going to do exactly what he's just told Councillor Colleen that he would do. But yeah, gosh, is it 2 years ago? It's a very, very long time ago. And every time I've seen him since, I said, how are we doing with this enforcement thing? So my warning is, yes, okay, we wait to see it happen because it is something that we desperately need. That was set in train in the first place because so many people locally are complaining about the lack of enforcement, and it's lovely to have a new member of staff joining the team. But really, we do need to stop people just going ahead and building without any kind of permission, in the hope that because it's so lax that nobody's going to notice that it's happened, because they do find out when they come to sell their property because they discover that it's not registered with the land registry. However, it is something we desperately do need to do to show that we can get all our ducks in a row, and that we are abiding by the rules and regulations. It is so maddening to watch people taking the law into their own hands, but equally as distressing to watch people who are suffering because they are at the mercy of people who are behaving badly on enforcement. So, yes, anybody who can just say to Mike, this is desperately badly needed. We do need to make certain we've got this going. Okay, but really, he had promised first of all that he would call me in to talk about this thing when he'd written it, and then I could discuss it with the working party. And I think I'd rather do it that way around than do it with the whole of the Scrutiny Committee, because they are the people who are waiting to hear.
Okay, John, you want to come in as well, if you're brief?
A couple of points. One is just to support Mary on enforcement. We had an outrageous case, frankly, in Burwash, Swan Inn House, which badly affected, because it was part of a composite property originally, badly affected the next door neighbour. And although we resolved it eventually using planning, the next door neighbour's party wall has never recovered. So enforcement sometimes has or lack of it, has very detrimental effects, which need sometimes to be taken more account of. I wanted, however, just to say something on the health and well-being thing, because it seems to me it would be very useful to have a session, or at least an item on that, to which we could invite. I mean, Terry's already a member of the committee, but we could invite our representative on the Health and Wellbeing Board, and possibly even invite the Director of Public Health to attend for that session.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd be very willing to do so, because he likes actually to stress the importance of his work, and indeed it is very important work indeed. And we appoint to the Health and Wellbeing Board. I was Teresa's predecessor, and there's nowhere to which we can report.
Yeah.
So we're not really accountable to the body that appoints us. And this is why it went into the State of the Nation. But I think actually having a session on it periodically would be rather a useful one.
Can I pinch a bit of that space and just say my bit on that as well, if you don't mind, Paul? I was the representative of Rother on HOSC before Terry, and I think it's so important that when we do have items that we actually make, we do send a report back to Rother. I did it regularly during the COVID outbreak, but of course there's a big opportunity in the report from the outside bodies for the council meeting, and I used to do one for that as well, so that there is at least an annual report, even if there isn't a regular one coming up every 2 or 3 times a year. But it is useful if you can use the minutes, with permission obviously, to send important things that you think Rother would be interested in hearing, and it is useful to have that link.
Right, Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I mean, I'll obviously declare interest again, just to be absolutely sure, obviously as lead member for Adult Social Care and Health, and I've been a member of obviously the Health and Wellbeing Board since its inception. I think that the work that public health do, and I think it's important to acknowledge that for the most part that's ring-fence funding, and that whilst in comparison with the adult social care budget as a whole, it is a relatively small budget of the importance of some of the work that is done by the public health, and the enormous amount of statistics that is evidence-based, that work that's carried out. I think the only thing I would say is, whilst Darryl Gale is an absolute mine of information and almost encyclopedic knowledge of his brief, I think that you need to be very clear, particularly as a scrutiny committee, about what you want to know, because there are statistics, and as Councillor Colleen has referred to, and others, Councillor Barnes has referred to, obviously there are slide presentations that are very useful. But whilst I think that Darryl will be probably more than happy to come down, perhaps to full council, and give a diatribe in terms of a very fulsome one, I'm sure, in terms of what public health actually does in the county, I think it'd be really useful if you're going to invite Darryl to any meeting, to be absolutely focused on what it is that you want to know. Because if it's simply, as Councillor Colleen suggested, you want to see the slides about, where the problems are, and to be quite frank, they are normally related to areas of deprivation, where we're talking about longevity, where we're talking about health inequalities, where we're frankly talking about drugs, and we're talking about obviously the negative effect upon lifespans, but also we're doing across multi authorities, we're doing work around smoking cessation, for example. But I think it'd be really useful, if you do want to invite this is true of any time when you want to bring in an external expert, it is what you want to get out of it. Because if you're asking somebody to come along, if you just want the evidence so that you can pore over it as something of interest, and I think it's very important that we're fully informed as members, whether you sit on the Health and Wellbeing Board, whether you're, if I may say so, inverted commas, an ordinary councillor on Rother, I think that those stats are really, really useful. They're really, really useful for officers where we work across districts and boroughs, and indeed East Sussex County Council and the health sector in terms of looking at where we can make a positive impact. But it's really important, I think, to be quite focused on what you want. So if it's information, that can just be provided, and I'm absolutely sure that the Director of Public Health will give you that information. If you want something like a presentation about what do we actually do in terms of public health in East Sussex, I would suggest that's something for full council, just in the way that, for example, we invite the Chief Executive of the Delaware Pavilion along annually. It's perhaps timely to invite Darryl to a full council meeting if indeed members feel that they want to know more about public health in East Sussex. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Right, I'm going to go back to the Planning Enforcement Task and Finish group. I'm going to leave it with Councillor Colleen to speak to Mike, get us an email out whenever that is, whether that's next week or the week after or the week after that. Make sure and include, can you make sure and include Mary in any conversation, if that's possible, please, Teresa. And then get us an email out. We can send it out to this committee, see what we think, and then we'll get it on the agenda for the March meeting, and then hopefully we'll have that tidied up. And if at the end of the March meeting we still decide we need a task and finish group, and we've got one half set up, we can do that. Oh, yeah, what's up?
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to come back on the points that were made by Councillor Barnes. So I do know that Mike Hughes has been here about a year, and I know his predecessor was perhaps picking up the enforcement policy prior to that. And I know since Mike has joined, which was slightly before me, I think his priority has been the local plan, and I think that's been very clear. But what I would say is that I think on the last occasion this was raised, I did suggest that perhaps it go to the planning committee, as that was perhaps the better format for it. But having spoken to Mike, he did feel that because operational matters went to planning committee, he thought it was better suited coming to overview and scrutiny. So can I suggest that once it's been drafted, it be shared with Councillor Barnes and yourself before bringing it back to overview and scrutiny? Yep. Thank you. Okay.
You happy with that, Mary? I'll say that as a yes. You're muted at the minute. You're still muted. There is a bonus. Oh dear.
I wasn't in any way trying to imply that I was in trying to harass Mike about this, and I did understand that there were other things coming up. But I took it from the fact that he's very enthusiastic indeed to see an improvement in our enforcement services, that he would actually get down to it and make a thorough job of it. So I wasn't in any way trying to imply that I thought he was slacking, which is maybe how I came across.
So you're
I do
happy.
apologise. So I'm very happy with that. That's really good. Okay.
Good. Okay, that's the way forward on that. And the Health and Wellbeing Task and Finish Group, I'm going to leave that one with Councillor Cook to liaise with Anna, and that'll be good, won't it? Yeah, and Councillor Thomas, Richard?
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to see your stress upon enforcement and also that of the Barnes and Booter, because it is probably the issue on which my electronic postbag gets the most responses. People are really concerned about things like parking on side roads, particularly with earth moving equipment, etc. They're concerned with failure of wheel washing. They're also concerned about the effects on noise, etc., for surrounding properties. Working outside the agreed hours is a major issue. Damage to roads, all sorts of things like this are always being raised. I'd just like to say quickly, I've had some very good support from other officers over enforcement. They haven't always been consistently successful, because my experience has been that what happens is the builders conform when there's a fuss, then they backslide, and then when there's a further fuss, they start being a lot more cooperative. But it's that sort of process, that sort of process which seems to be necessary. I think it's worth stressing that one of the great problems faced by any district council is the lack of good government legislation to back up enforcement efforts. And I think that needs to be really understood. And I would like to see the council, whose publicity, by the way, recently on a range of matters, I think has strongly improved. I think it's been a real improvement in Rother's publicity of late. I'm very pleased to see it. But I think publicity around this would be a very, very good thing. And just one last point. I think it'd be really good if we get young people more involved in relation to all these issues, including health and welfare, maybe particularly health and welfare, because we need to do something about the disconnect between organisations like ours and the more youthful population in the country. So I'd like to see more involvement of young people. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, so who wants to move this in? Right, Mark, Councillor Legg is moving it. Councillor Cook has seconded it. All those in favour of this? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Last item, item 10. So we've got Community Safety Partnership Annual Report, the next meeting, Performance Report, third quarter, Revenue Budget, Capital Programme Monitoring, and we add to that the discussion on the letter with regard to the Task and Finish Planning Enforcement. Whatever we come up with, or whatever might come up with, yeah. And then the 27th of April, we're in informal remote meeting with call-in and urgency procedures, draft annual report to council. And we got the work programme there, which we will basically be looking at a special meeting in May after full council, where we will go through our annual work programme planning for the year coming up. Happy with that? Good.
Chairman.
Yeah, John?
Sorry to raise a procedural point, but if we're looking at the draft annual report at an online meeting, we really need dispensation to be able to propose its adoption. Can Biffa give some attention to that?
I think it's only what we've done the last couple of years, isn't it, to be honest? It's just my summary report that Louise writes for me, and then we sort of approve it, and then it goes to full council.
Yeah,
I'm sure everybody reads it. Charlie.
Yeah, unless I've missed something, I was looking at the plan of the work programme over the next few months. When do we get a hailing update on rough sleepers, homelessness, and strains on providing temporary accommodation and how we're coping with that? We used to get like a housing report in November or something like that, didn't we? Because I'd just like to keep a finger on it, if I'm on it, yeah.
We will find out which committee that goes to, but it's not on the forward plan here, is it? We'll
It's
find
important
out.
to keep an eye on it,
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, right, well, everybody happy now with what we've got? I'll take that as a yes. So if you're happy, I will declare the meeting closed at 19:39 according to the iPad. Thank you very much for your attendance.